and in that role, she leads the execution of their infrastructure and impact strategy. We'll also be hearing from Adaora Islas today. And she is a community development specialist with Self-Help Enterprise, where her primary line of work is to support communities to participate in groundwater and regional water management planning efforts, as well as to build capacity to advocate for drinking water needs in their communities. And so today, as always, I will be the moderator, and Jess and I will be moderating the chat. So questions will come in as you all present. Don't feel any pressure to answer them on the spot. You're more than welcome to, whatever you feel comfortable with, but Jess and I will be monitoring the chat. To all those attending, I don't know if you have attended before, as always, Jess and I will be responding to those questions and taking tally of those questions. So feel free to ask in the chat, and we'll make sure those questions get answered. We do have a hard cutoff of 3 p.m. today due to some other scheduling conflicts. So we'll try to get started as soon as possible. But again, thank you so much. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kavian, for that nice introduction. And thank you also to Jessica and both of you for putting this series together. It's been very wonderful. I've attended at least 5 of them, and it's really been a learning experience. I'd also like to thank our PI for the fellowship, Sarah McCullough, who is, I believe, is on the call, and for putting this, having the vision to put together the fellowship for all of us. And we're the first cohort, hopefully looking forward to many more. So I'm going to share my screen shortly, and this is really to talk about, for both of us, me and Angela, we're going to be talking about how we got here. How did we find ourselves at the, in the Environmental Justice Fellowship with UC Davis, and really share our career roadmap and some of the groundings of the work that we've been doing. So I'll give me a few minutes and I'll share my screen. Okay, everybody can see it okay? So just thank you very much. And like I told Jessica, there may be a little time when you see me look over to my right. That'll be me just looking at some of my notes in case I have anything critical that I missed telling you, not that I'm not paying attention. But thank you all so much for attending. Like I said, this is really for the fellows, for us to tell you my pathway to a place in the 2022 UC Davis Environmental Justice Fellowship. So this is really, KBM's done a good job of letting you know who I am. I am currently the Director of Impact at Soul Systems. I joined them in November of 2021, but my career has spanned over 15 years of program management and leadership experience in the energy industry, specific focus in the past 5 years of working in the rural utility territory. I attended George Mason and Florida International University as well. So really, this is my pathway to a career in energy justice and also the UC Davis Fellowship. It's been nothing about my career, and like many of us I'd like to think, is intentional. We all start out, either through education, and this is where we think our lives are going to go. But as things happen in life, you find out that you make decisions along the way based on the chances and encounters and opportunities that come along the way. For me, I broke this out into really, starting out. And what got me thinking about this career roadmap is really because of some of the work I'm doing. I sit on a number of working groups that are looking at workforce development, how we can, especially in terms of equity, and how we can include more people of color in this energy industry, specifically solar and other renewables. So it got me thinking about how I started, because they asked for my input, and you find out that there's really no one pathway into getting into this work. When I started before 2005, I was working for the telephone company, and that was when I was answering telephones as a customer service person, and that's when I went to grad school. Right after grad school, my first company was to work for an accounting firm, like a lease auditing firm, when I was a quality control manager. Again, I took the job probably because it was right around the first .com burst, and that was what was available. So I took the job, I needed a job. Gradually, it brought me into the DC area from Florida, and that's the 2005 to 2008. This was where I was introduced to project management as a discipline. I I was looking for a job. I got laid off from a job and I was out of a job for 6 months. I applied, started looking, okay, what do I need to do? Started doing research into what could give me a new skill that will take me into, the next phase. And I started hearing about Certified Associate in Project Management, PMP, things like that. That was my foray into the federal government consulting space in DC. And I started out in IT. So I was an IT project administrator. I was an IT consultant. And again, no plans to do anything different, but it was where the job took me. After 3 years, found out that IT was not something that I particularly liked, but it was a job. By the consulting company I was working for in 2008, Bearing Point, filed bankruptcy. And then again, by chance, I said, okay, where am I going to land? With my project management experience, by that time, I had managed significant projects in that space. It took me into the energy industry, which was Department of Energy and EPA as a federal government contractor. By being in DC, you're open to many of those kinds of opportunities. And that's where I spent 9 years in a number of offices at Department of Energy, managing large portfolios of federal government investments. So from spending that time, it really exposed me to different parts of the energy industry. And when it came time to make a change, I was introduced to the utilities, which is where I spent the past 4 years at the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association. And that was the start really of my work in the impact, low-income equity space. After 4 years, it led me to working as a director of impact at Soul Systems, which really is a leadership opportunity to look at working with corporate community impact work and really taking it hopefully into I would build that engagement within the space. I always thought really that I would end up in international development, but I'm working in domestic development, but looking at, because some of the issues that we find in the international space, you can certainly find it here. They may be in different ways, but this is really a way to continue to build onto that work and the many pathways to the energy and environment space. So one of the areas, the two things that I would like to focus on really is the sector spaces that really brought me into the community impact and equity work. And it all started at my work with the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, and that's the association that represents rural electric cooperatives in the United States. And before I started working for NRCA, I didn't really know much about how the utilities were structured. I learned, of course, that we have the investor-owned utilities, the PG&Es, San Diego Electric, Baltimore Electric. Those are investor-owned. And you also find rural electric cooperatives who provide service in the rural parts of the United States. Those were established really by Franklin D. Roosevelt during Rural Electrification Act in the 1930s, because there was no way to really put power into rural areas because of the fact that not many people lived in rural communities, and this is what led to establishing rural electric cooperatives. I don't need to read much of that data for you. You can certainly see there are about 900 of them in the United States. They maintain about 42% million miles in the US, provide electricity to much of the landmass of the US, but really only 11% of the population. But one of the things that stood out to me and the things that really grounded my work in the space is the fact that cooperatives serve what is considered the 92% of persistent poverty counties in the United States. There are about 400 of these such counties, and the rural utilities serve about 300 and close to 390 of them, about 92%. So that was something that really stood out in my work and really grounded much of the programs that I led while I was at NREC and continued to build on it in my work at Soul Systems. Another thing that also stood out is really the principles and values that rural electric cooperatives that operate on. And the one I'll point out is the seventh one, which is concern for community. Again, that has an underpinning in the work that I do that I did at NREC as well. I wanted to use this, really share some of these quick facts and figures. Again, these are things that I got familiar to me, while I was working at NREC, and continue to build on this. There may be people who also are familiar with these numbers, or it may even come as a surprise to many people. I would say that before I started working at NRECA, this is not something that I would have thought about in terms of the question about rural energy burden. It's certain that, that many of us do know that most Americans don't have enough money to cover emergencies, but you also like to see that there is something called the energy burden. And this is really about the percentage of somebody's income that goes towards the energy expenses. And you can see how that is set up, by the rural breakdown. And the reason I chose rural energy, of course, just to put that out there, is because of the work that I did, and that's where it started from. Overall, rural households have a median energy burden that is higher than what you see in the national energy burden. You can also see that certain other groups, low-income households, Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, renters, and older adults also have a largely disproportionate high energy burdens than the national median household. And if you're poor, chances are that you will spend 3 times more of your income on energy costs compared to other non-low-income households. And you can see the number there, 8.1% versus 2.3%. The percentage of energy burden really that they say when you hit is high, thus you look at it, federal government agencies, anything from 6% and above is really high energy burden. And you're spending most of your money paying for energy needs across the spectrum, across the various spectrums as well. Okay, so from that, it led to knowing all of that really in that work as I was spend my first number of years at NRECA. I started looking at how can we, with the facts that we have, knowing that cooperatives are serving 92% of persistent poverty counties, is there a way to address the work, highlight and spotlight the work that they're doing for their communities and the members that they serve in a way that allows us to bring, to have more, I would say, put a spotlight on the work that they're doing, as well as bring relationships and partnerships that will allow them to continue to do the work. Cooperatives go above and beyond, really just keeping the lights on. There are a number of communities that you find that the cooperative provides services like scholarships, mental health services, healthcare services, community hubs, community development efforts that go beyond just, keeping the lights on, which is what they are chartered to do, which is to keep connected to electricity. But because of that, I figured that there would be an initiative a way that we can spotlight the work that they're doing. And if NRECA serves, the rural cooperatives serve that percentage of people, they should have a seat at the table in terms of looking for solutions that can be help them advance some of their needs. So this led to an initiative that I started at NRECA called Advancing Energy Access for All. What we have here really is I would say the objectives of what this initiative was to do, which is, it's a way to create a sustainable practice around supporting the cooperatives as they holistically serve their members, especially those who struggle to pay their bills. So this way we look for building a community of interest so that cooperatives who are working on similar issues, especially as we're looking at a clean energy transition to a clean energy economy, will come together and advance, share their lessons learned, opportunities with each other. So I built a community of interest. We had a group, about 200 to 300 cooperatives signed on to really help advance this message. One of the key goals of this initiative was really to identify and help establish partnerships to advance solutions for cooperatives. By doing that, it was really looking at partnerships, whether it be in federal government space, state, philanthropy, in such a way that we can bring grants and funding to projects that mean a lot to the rural electric cooperatives and form partnerships to work with them with these R&D projects or other grant work that will continue to help them. And this would also be a way to inform and educate these various partners on what the challenges are and the opportunities as well in rural communities. So building on that work, of course, that's like every time at some point, it was time to make the move to the next level of the next phase of my career, pairing the work that I had done and making the relationships that I had built in the community to take it to and say, okay, this is there could be another way to deepen the community impact work we're doing, but this time looking at it from a for-profit perspective. With these relationships here, what is the next place that we can take it to as well? So these are decisions that we all make as we come towards our career roadmap. So as of November 20, last year, I joined Soul Systems. Soul Systems is a small for-profit organization. It's about 14 years old with about 120 employees. It is run by its founder. And this is what they do: would provide you solar energy from solutions, including financing solutions for organizations. And the mission really is what attracted me, because it fit into this, I would say, this grounding that I had established over time and built into my energy career. I was also set up by working with the rural electric cooperative community. But the mission of Soul Systems is really to work with their customers, industry, and communities to accelerate an equitable transition to sustainable energy in the future. This is their mission, and it's what Soul Systems strives to do, strives to do throughout its business units. So my role as the director of impact at Soul Systems is internal and external facing. Internally is for me to advise and guide the internal staff on kind of the diversity and equity task force advisory responsibility. The staff is doing it, they're doing a good job, or really to add expertise and things that I've learned by working in rural communities, things I've learned from other previous experiences, to see how can we continue to advance the mission of Soul as it's looking to be part of the conversations around an equitable transition to a sustainable energy future. You have to take care of your own house first before you can go out and start talking to external partners on what they need to do to guide this transition. Externally, my role as Director of Impact involves identifying community organizations that we can invest in with our corporate partners, and industry partnerships, industry boards on workforce development, DEI research, things like that, to help continue to ensure that communities are not being left behind. So if we have partners that are interested in doing good work around energy in communities, for me, I'm the one who leads the execution of this project and work with community organizations to identify their critical needs. So I wanted to focus on I noticed, when I look back on what I had done at my goals at the places, my entire career, the ones that stand out are what has been the foundation of the work that I've done. There's been a common thread. There was a common thread, what I was doing at NREC and what I'm doing at Soul Systems now. It's really asking this question: how can we ensure that renewable energy systems are deployed equitably so everyone reaps the benefits? We're doing that. We know that communities that the rural utilities serve are usually low income, and in certain areas, it could even be predominantly people of color. So looking at how do we answer that question? So that really has been the foundation of the work that I've done at these two areas, these two companies. And I wanted to really hone in on that, just to give you a flavor of what I learned and what I've been able to do since I joined these two organizations. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is that I learned from various work projects that I've worked in and things, what we've been doing is that, if we're going to look at deploying renewable energy systems equitably, the number of things that we can focus on that would help us do this work, which is how programs are being designed and how we're being and those same programs are being financed. So if you're looking at some of the program design examples that are coming up and that people are taking notice of and working on, is looking at community solar. Low-income community solar remains an option to allow in a program that allows more people, including low-income households, renters, and people who do not have suitable roofs that can support panels to participate. Resilience hubs in communities are ways that communities who may not want everybody cannot maybe participate in community solar, but they want a community hub that is run on solar energy storage and acts like a mini microgrid that they can use during times of when the power is out, as a meeting place for the community. That is a way that you can still let communities, everybody get access to renewable energy. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to have a panel on their roof or that they have to subscribe to some community solar. Community solar is one of them, but there may be places and people who cannot subscribe, but or rather their community has access to that. Even a workforce program is a way of allowing people to gain, low-income communities and other communities to gain access to the renewable energy systems. There are many different pathways. You could also look at, how to extending solar or to apartment buildings. That's a talk now that some of the routes of apartment buildings can be useful in such a way that you can craft program designs that allow that to be the case. Granted, you have issues around the split incentive problem where the landlord and the tenant, who is going to benefit? So that's a question that comes on. Sometimes the landlord has no incentive to fix up their building or provide that if the people in the building are going to benefit it. But there are ways now that you can certainly start crafting, maybe through virtual net energy metering, you can craft a partnership, an agreement that allows both the tenant and benefit to share, tenant and the landlord to share the benefits. There are certain organizations, I believe a company called IV Energy based in California, I believe, is exploring a platform that would allow such shared partnership in rent apartment buildings. Of course, having behind the meter services and what is called like hybridization of energy efficiency and solar programs. Putting energy efficiency and solar together allows also a gateway of how you can design programs that allow more people who may not really be the typical candidates for solar to gain more access of that. Roanoke Electric, one of the cooperatives that I worked with while I was in NRCA, has been looking at ways to bundle energy efficiency, which really is the kind of the low-hanging fruit and the gateway to ultimately getting solar to work in a way that you can use the credit benefits that you get from that to expand the solar programs as well. So you look at financing. How do you finance this project so that more people get it? Government funding mechanisms do exist. The USDA has loans, 0% loans that it offers utilities and other entities to fund renewable energy projects. And that way, by getting that really low 0% rate from the government, you can turn around and it increases the universe of programs that any utility or entity can certainly set up. Private finance is another way. There are green banks springing up, community banks, credit unions are expanding the universe of financing options that are available to ensure that communities are not being left behind. And of course, there's philanthropic partnerships and looking at models that allow individuals who really do not have access to capital to finance some of these projects by putting individual energy efficiency or even upfront costs of solar subscriptions on their bill. So look, again, this is a way to look at how do we design a program or finance it in such a way that it allows, it increases the universe of participants in the renewable energy space. So this is another, I would say this is a growing area as well that allows more equitable deployment of renewable energy systems. And this is what the corporate buyers, large corporate buyers are doing with impact. And this is where Soul Systems has taken I would say is leading, because this is one of the first things we've just signed. And this is an opportunity that I am leading. It's looking at how large corporate buyers who are being driven by their clean energy goals. Let's say you have the Microsofts and the Amazons who have decided that they're going to have a clean energy, renewable energy goal by X date. And to do that, they know that they're going to need large purchases or procurements of renewable energy. So I'm showing this example as one of the first examples of this. You may read it in the news regularly that, oh, Amazon just ordered or has signed a deal to purchase X megawatts of renewable energy from this corporate developer. That's standard clean energy procurement. But that procurement provides you with an opportunity to add an impact layer to your purchase. Granted, there is no obligation to do a clean, to do anything beyond, hey, we have data centers or we have facilities all over the country in the state. I just want to buy the equivalent of renewable energy that will cover our electric bills. That's perfectly fine. You can do that. But if you're looking for a way to ensure that communities are not left behind, you want to add sustainability to your goals, meet your ESG goals, and you're thinking about equity, corporate procurement is an opportunity to do just that. just recently, and it's certainly very Googleable. You can Google this. Microsoft and Sol Systems signed an agreement to build, where Sol Systems would supply to Microsoft 500 megawatts of renewable energy, and also use that procurement to boost community investment. So without going into the details of the mechanics of the structure, how this is structured, but knowing that revenues that come out of this large procurement will be plowed back into the communities, either around where the projects are sited or other communities that we have the same mission or focus areas that are in alignment with the goals of, I would say the mission and the goals of equity and sustainability goals of both Microsoft and Sol Systems. So the other announcement to the right is now when we turned around, we've done the first initial funding of community organizations that will help us scale this impact. And some of those community organizations are in regions that we identified, and they're looking at doing work that fits into the overall, the holistic picture that is related to ensuring that communities are not left behind. And the communities that are being targeted are communities that have been historically under-resourced economically, communities that have been adversely impacted by climate change or environmental pollution, and 3, communities that are going to in danger of, they will probably be left behind, impacted because we're moving gradually to a clean energy economy, which will be coal communities. So you want to make sure that communities are not left behind. We're all getting, if we're going to close down coal mines, what are we doing? What is the plan for the, stranded assets, or what is the plan for the communities that depended on this for their livelihood for a long time? So this kinds of projects that we funded will be in those communities, and they could be around workforce development, it could be around resilience hubs, it could be around expanding clean energy generation in some way, it could be habitat restoration, it could be agrivoltaic, but anything that looks at the whole umbrella that allows communities and individuals to participate in what's happening now, looking at those target communities. So this is, I highlight this because there are many there are many pathways into equitable deployment of renewable energy systems. It's not just, let's focus on, oh, do I have solar on my roof? Or do I have, sometimes we get stuck in the weeds. There are many ways. Not everybody is going to buy an electric vehicle. Not everybody is going to, sign off for a community subscription. But if you look at the different pathways, whether it's increasing workforce development opportunities so that people know that there are many different ways to participate in clean energy, whether it's through being a solar technician, installer, or even working in accounting, but expanding the universe of what it means to ensure that communities are not being left behind. There are different ways that you can continue to do that. And of course, this, somebody may ask me, what is driving this community impact investment? Why are industry partners looking to do that? And well, the answer to that is really, what we're seeing. There are a number of barriers to renewable energy adoption, some of these energy affordability and burdens, and the continuing wealth gap. So these are changes. People are voting with their wallets, and they're putting pressure on corporates to do more around this space. And the opportunities, these are some of the things that I already mentioned, the ways that you can continue to invest in communities to ensure that our communities are not being left behind. There's so many of them, opportunities. And then this is really lessons learned so far. Again, is really knowing that there are many angles and all of them can help unlock large-scale co-benefits for communities. The opportunities are extraordinary. The challenge is there. There's no doubt about that. Even I struggle with, how do we get this done? What are the things we need to do? Is it just because sometimes you can do one thing and it doesn't look like it's moving the needle in any way until you talk to somebody who has been impacted with the ideas that you're trying to implement, and you say, okay, I'll keep going. And it then presents an opportunity to thinking outside the box. And finally, I'll round it up with what has been key to my work so far, whether it was through working with the cooperatives and also working with the communities. Now I'm working with the Sol Systems, that building partnerships and trust remains a really key aspect to getting things done in this industry, and also continuing how we continue to enable equity and justice as a whole. So this is what has brought me to my path in this environmental justice fellowship with UC Davis. So I thank you all for the time.
Adaora, thank you so much for that very thorough and thoughtful presentation. I think at this time, we're going to switch gears and allow Angela to present her half. And also, we want to remind everyone that if you have any questions at any point, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring those so we can ask our speakers after. I know we're at a hard cutoff at 3 p.m., but we can also have those questions forwarded offline as well. So feel free to ask away. All right, without further ado, we'll turn it over to Angela and we'll get back into the presentation.
Thanks, Kavian. And again, thanks to Jessica for allowing Adaora and I to be able to have this space to talk to all of you about really like how we got into this work of environmental justice. But for my own sake, I'm going to time myself for 10 minutes so that way we have an opportunity to just get to Q&A, because I know lots of you had maybe some questions for Adaora's presentation, and I want to give a chance for you all to, ask those away. But
well, Angela, you don't have to rush. By all means, take your time.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to rush it. It's fine.
Okay.
Whatever pace you go, and we'll definitely share questions offline. We want to really hear from you all in your content, so don't feel rushed at all.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I'll just probably keep it like that. But today I do not have a presentation. I just feel like, sometimes I will have time to make a presentation. I don't have time. So I'm going to be very very personal and very narrative on my background, on how I got into this work, and just maybe answer a few questions that was given to me in relations to like what I can, give for you all as fruitful information on what you want to take away when you're going into your career paths post graduation. So I will say that in the beginning of my life, I did not anticipate being in this field. I went to California State University of Fresno, and I actually wanted to be an English major. And be a writer or a journalist, and maybe try to get into more of just the writing aspect of what I enjoyed in high school. And in the end, I didn't see that passion, so I went undeclared in the beginning, and it just kind of went all just everywhere for me. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was just exploring a lot in college until I landed on the idea of becoming maybe a nurse, and got into pre-nursing. That didn't go well either. So then all of a sudden I kind of switched into public health and focused on that degree in community health, because there was a bigger scope that I wanted to explore around, how we can bring more, healthy programs, or even especially like more healthcare near a lot of communities, especially rural communities that had an issue with having access to healthcare or even clinics nearby. So that was kind of the idea of why I got into public health, and maybe it was an easy route away from nursing. That's not an excuse. I just still wanted to see what I could do, like to really kind of, in a way, give back to my community. That was ultimately what I was thinking about post-college, going into college and then post-college. But my first job was very not energy oriented. It was very public health and very air quality oriented. I did do an internship with my first job, which was Central California Asthma Collaborative in Fresno, for about a year. I was doing an internship for free, was not getting paid. I was working at a climbing gym for like a year as well during my internship, living with my parents still, and just trying to navigate, finishing one of my last classes to get my degree, and doing an internship unpaid on top of working. So it was like a very kind of like tight year where I was just trying to find my place. And within that, after a year in September 2017 was when I was offered a position to be a community health worker for Central California Asthma Collaborative, and began just kind of implementing one of their programs, which was a free asthma service-based program for low-income families to be able to have in 2 different counties here in the San Joaquin Valley. So surprising enough to say, it is mind-blowing that there is no asthma prevention services that exist anywhere that is implemented in the state. And that was very, for me, controversial to know that that wasn't even an actual program that was available. So says a lot with, what we have to do to advocate for families to be able to have free services. But there was a hidden thing within the organization that I didn't know it existed, but there was also an advocacy portion with that organization that they were exploring. Other than it being just very health-based and, very like advocacy, like towards public health needs, I found out that they were also exploring advocacy and air quality issues. And my executive director was very, very, very intelligent and super following a lot of different air quality policies in the state of California, especially following policies like in the school district level, locally and regionally, in terms of like, if there's any air quality policies that were available for students to be able to feel protected from bad air quality days, or even like, and to protect asthmatic children who are in more need in the school to be able to have those services available. So I didn't know that. And all of a sudden it just kind of began this exploration of advocacy and understanding, how we can advocate for a lot of these families and get them involved too in these types of roles of showing kind of the more narrative perspective of what air quality does in their communities, or what poor air quality does and impacts to those families that are living in those communities. So it was definitely not a very anticipated, career that I saw in myself that I could take that on, because it is complex and it is political, obviously, but it just kind of evolved and it landed in my lap all of a sudden for me to be an advocate, and me discovering also the grassroots level of being a community organizer and, having that personal connection with communities one-on-one, educating them about, like what's going on here with pesticide regulation, or what's going on here when it comes to like, meeting our air quality standards. So it was definitely a lot of experience that I was getting, even with other partnering organizations that I was able to work with alongside. So it kind of just evolved into all of a sudden like, okay, I'm not just a community health worker, but now I'm a policy advocate and exploring and learning legislation and different regional policies on how to, meet our air quality standards. But what kind of changed everything for me was when I was allowed, and I mean allowed because obviously I was so new and I didn't know what I would be able to be capable of like participating in a capacity of being able to advise. But I was given permission to apply for a state energy group that's called the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group. And I will drop that in the chat afterwards for 2 different websites that y'all can just kind of go over. But the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group is under state law. It was developed under state law, which is Senate Bill 350. And that I believe is the, I think it's like the Pollution Reduction Act of 2015. That law itself created a individual disadvantaged community advisory group that was made of 11 members across the state of California that would support the Public Utilities Commission of California, as well as the California Energy Commission, and advise on several of their programs on how to better incorporate equity and environmental justice principles to meet the program's qualifications for vulnerable communities that are in need of affordable energy programs, but also to help reduce bad air quality in their areas. So that one particular group is what helped me launch myself into now this new field of energy justice work and exploring all of the different issues across California on really just kind of how to meet affordability for a lot of residents, but also touch bases on climate resiliency, because our climate is ever changing now with, I guess like a multiple combination of not meeting our air quality standards, not having enough resilient projects that would still support with climate changing, but mitigation as well with communities that get impacted at the end of, these different climate crises that we're going through, such as wildfire season or even drought, as we're experiencing here and in the state. So that group really did help me not only feel that there is a lot of potential to get, to be able to incorporate equity and energy and environmental justice principles, but it really shows ultimately like how much like you yourself have the capacity to still learn as you go. And I've been in that group already for 4 years. I just reapplied myself to be reappointed for my last 2 years. So for a total of 6 years being in that group and learning so much from it, I think is an ultimate blessing for me, because it led me into my new role here at Self Help Enterprises, starting off as an energy specialist, jump starting like a new, electric vehicle rideshare program to just understand like how we can better have these services more available to rural communities who have that lack of transportation, but also helping with meeting the climate goals overall. That was my first, opportunity to be able to jumpstart a program like that, as well as jumpstart a pilot program that would help understand the kind of shift between fuel energy sources that impact, communities, either from their outdoor or indoor environment, to now new clean energy supplies that would help enhance their home or even better their quality of life in their home, as opposed to using wood burning or propane as their source of heat in general. So that then led me to the groundwater work. And even so, like, I know that was such a huge shift, but I remember the first day that I started with my new group, the energy group, I was very optimistic and starting off the conversation saying, I can't wait to see the nexus between water and energy because I know there's something there. And that's how I always walk into these new jobs. I always walk in seeing that there is opportunity for there to be collaboration with everything that we're doing. There's no one-way street from what I look at when I, see like energy or air quality issues or even like water quality issues. There's always something that always ends up meeting in the middle with everything that we work on. So I always felt that was the same thing with my career path. Like, I didn't plan this out. Like, I wasn't sitting like in my room at home, like in Selma, California, which this is the photo that is taken at where I'm close to from my home. But it just kind of made me feel like there is a passion that I had starting from when I started my internship to where it led me now. And so in the field that we do, a lot of folks have a huge passion that really takes them somewhere to where it can lead you into a really great direction of where you can see yourself giving back to your communities, or even giving back to the residents that really are in need of just, assistance, or even so to really advance themselves to be able to have a more resilient community and a better quality of life. I think that's really important to keep in mind, that passion is what drives more than, I think what I always see and what I always hear from a lot of people, it's like, the book smart kind of mindset. But it's good to be book smart too, or even like, so like just understand like what is out there. Because for me, it's like, I always see myself as community organizer, and I live and breathe a community organizer, because for me, it's me giving back to my home. And every resident that I've been able to resonate here on the ground has been very vital to push my motivation to continue to be in this space and learn more on how I can bring equity and just justice overall for communities to be able to have the home and the quality of life that they all deserve. So I think that's the best way I can end the conversation that I have, because for me, I feel like this is more of a personal space to show that, there's no right or wrong, like where your career will like take you. It's just really your passion is where it's going to take you overall. So for me, I feel like there's definitely many different methodologies and models that we can learn on how we can better enhance the programs here in the state to really meet and serve communities a lot more better. But it definitely starts with you as the advocate and as the person who can actually bring that change to those communities. So I really do appreciate you all giving me the space here today to just, be able to be personal as well as very, what's the word? I guess just like hopefully inspirational in a sense of giving you all a different look of the work that I do personally here in this space. So appreciate it.
Well, Angela, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and honestly being transparent and bringing that kind of air of personability, if you will, from the research perspective, right? So it's a very different approach, and it's really important. I think you hit on something really important, especially for me as like a student, like, and dealing with burnout. It's just like sometimes passion for what you do and loving what you do is just as important as being able to just be good at it. Like, you can be good at something, but if it fatigues you and drains you daily, day in, day out, then it's really hard to keep up. But when you're passionate about something, then it's easy to continue to do it because you love the work. And I think that that's a really important aspect of just anything that you do, right? And I think that you've really highlighted that for us. Personally, I want to thank you all for really showing this very interesting approach to how the next steps aren't just a straight line. And I think from a grad student perspective, that's really endearing and empowering, because it's very much so like, this is, for me especially, it's been school. So like, knowing that the next steps aren't necessarily where you're going to be forever is very nice to hear. It's a winding road, but definitely thankful for all that you have, shared with us. And I think we have time for maybe a question if anyone has a question, but we do want to, for sure, before we get into the questions, thank you all so much for coming and participating and really sharing your expertise with us. And so I'll open the floor to any questions. And if we don't have any, I know we're close to time. Okay, so we do have one, and I will by all means allow you to speak, Peter, and I will mute.
Angela, hey. I work at the California Energy Commission. I'm not going to assume that you know everything. I'm not going to assume that you know nothing. Are you familiar with a grant that we made, a couple $1 million late last fall, which is requiring the heavy involvement of CBOs, which are important for you? It is a grant to study the decommissioning of natural gas infrastructure. Are you familiar with it? There's East Bay Community Energy and PG&E under the leadership of the lead team, which is Energy Environmental Economics. They're doing the Bay Area, the East Bay, where East Bay Community Energy is trying to reach out to stakeholders, specifically the ones that are going to be impacted the worst, right? The small businesses, energy intensive small businesses, residences that can't afford to switch from natural gas to electricity, which would have to happen in order to get out of gas and to go into electricity. And then the other $1 million is being spent. The team lead is the RAND Corporation, and they're working with the cities of Santa Monica and Long Beach to do the same thing, to try to field a group of CBOs to get in touch on the ground with people in those two cities to assess the prospects for decommissioning natural gas distribution and switching these stakeholders, these end use customers, to electrification. Are you familiar with the research project?
I am not. I know there's been other, I guess, like proposals that the Energy Commission had shared with the group that I'm sitting on in terms of like bringing CBOs. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the DACAG. to just kind of like, oh, well, there's other proposals too that have the CBO component in, you know, funding and supporting CBOs to bring stakeholders, but this is more on the electric vehicle infrastructure side of the conversation. So that one definitely is new for me to hear. And, you know, I think I'm trying to meet the law right now.
Yeah, I don't want to bog you down with anything. And I think through your contacts in the DACAG, you'd be able to pick that one up and be part of it if you want to. It's going to be labor intensive because it's going to have to have a lot of boots on the ground from CBOs, both to make contact face to face with these end use customers to assess the prospects for being able to decommission natural gas infrastructure. The second thing that I wanted to bring up to you that it just came out our draft scoping order for the 2022 Integrated Energy Policy Report update. Oh, yeah, our lead commissioner, there are 3 research areas. One of them is going to be energy equity.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's, yeah, Vice Chairman Sivagunda, who's also a Davis guy. I'm UC Santa Cruz. So yeah, I'm not, that's my alma mater, but that scoping order, the draft just got posted, and it's going to focus on energy equity. It's the leadership from the governor's office and from the legislature is we can't ignore this. So you're in the right place at the right time. It seems to me this is where the action is and the games are getting started.
And that's true. I will say for just like better context for everybody else here in this room, that Energy Commission has definitely been, and I will say this to you, Peter, you have all been one of the leading organizations, leading agencies that have really taken seriously to incorporate the equity and environmental justice principles into many of your programs. I will definitely say that you all have been very much so the leading agency to really ensure that that is incorporated. And it is a pleasure that, you know, for myself being a part of the DACAG for many years, that I've been seeing that evolving, you know, piece moving around in your commission to ensure that the programs are definitely meeting those requirements. So I definitely appreciate you for sharing that with me. I will take that back to my body and make sure that we are tuning into it. So I definitely appreciate you for bringing that to my attention.
You're quite welcome. I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be gone in a few years and hope to be replaced by somebody like you.
Okay. No, appreciate it. We'll see where I'm at.
Very good.
In the next couple of years.
Okay.
But thank you so much. I'll allow anybody else who has questions. I know we don't have enough time.
Okay.
Well, that was very cool to observe, but yeah, I thank you all so much for.
I was like, I don't want to try to do business because I'm part of this law right now that I'm just like, I can't say anything. So I'm just trying to keep it down low.
Yeah, but hopefully you all can connect offline and have a more at length conversation. Again, thank you all so much for attending. We're coming short on time, but we do want to thank you all. And if you do have any questions, feel free to let us know. You can email Jess or I offline, and we can make sure we get those to our speakers today so we can have further discussions.